Hey, I'm so glad you joined me today. This is a 4-part series about setting boundaries and leadership. I hope this inspires you. Let's dive in. So this topic of boundary setting is a really important topic, and it's something I've been thinking about, talking about for quite a long time now. Boundary setting is something that I've had to kind of learn the hard way because I tend to be pretty motivated as an individual. I'm kind of one of those like achiever type people. And so for me, I love to work hard. I love to achieve. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a side consequence if you're kind of wired to be a go-getter, which is that we generally don't tend to set very good boundaries. We love to work. We love to show up. We love to grind. And the challenge here is that we will go and go and go so that we gain that affirmation so that we can kind of basically achieve and feel good about ourselves. But in that achieving, sometimes what happens is we can go so far that we can leave the things and the people that matter the most behind. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about organizations, whether that's a church or a school or a business, is that organizations, regardless of what sector they come from, tend to be fairly narcissistic. They tend to be self-serving, and they tend to continue to move forward whether you're there or not. So if you're in a church or a school or a corporation, they'll continue to take from you as long as you're willing to give. Now, that's how businesses work. You know, as a business owner, you want to get as much as you can out of your employees. But what you need to understand as an individual and as a leader is that if you don't set boundaries for yourself, no one really will. Now, I love this quote by Brene Brown, where Brene says, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others." Now, that's kind of what I'm talking about here for us who are motivated, all of us leaders who love to go out and achieve, is we have to be willing to disappoint others, even if it's in something that we're passionate about, whether that is your church or your school or your business. You've got to be willing to disappoint others, because if you don't, what you'll find is that the organizations will continue just to take from you, and you can find yourself on the edge of burnout. Now, one of the things about boundary setting that tends to come up a lot, especially for high achievers, is that we feel really guilty when we have to set a boundary. And what I want you to know is that's normal. Feeling guilty for setting a boundary, especially for high achievers, is a normal part of the process. But what you need to know is that if you don't set those boundaries, it can put you on the fast track to burnout. Recently, I was doing a workshop with a number of leaders, and each one of these people, they were actually business owners, and they each owned their own business. And there was one person in particular who was very burned out. And as she began to share her story, she began to share that she works 7 days a week from the time she gets up till the time she goes to bed. Now, she has young kids. She is married, but those relationships are really struggling right now. They're struggling bad because she feels like she has to keep working. She has to go. She has to immediately in the morning work. She has to work when she's laying in bed at night. She pulls out her phone. She just can't stop. And what she's beginning to discover is that the word boundary is almost like a dirty word. It's a word that has such a negative connotation because it brings up all of these feelings of guilt for her. But because she won't set a boundary, now she not only has guilt because she's not spending time with her kids and family, but she also has guilt because she doesn't know how to set the boundary at all. And so she's beginning to struggle. Her relationships with her kids are struggling. Her relationship with her spouse is struggling. Her relationship now at work, those relationships are even beginning to struggle because she's getting more and more exhausted. And when you begin to step into burnout because you don't know how to set boundaries, what happens is those small problems that you used to be able to solve easily because you had energy and passion, they begin to feel much more difficult to solve. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. So that thing that used to be a 1 on the Richter scale, it's beginning to show up like a 5 or a 6 or even a 10. And you begin to feel overwhelmed more and more consistently because you haven't set the boundary, because maybe you're struggling to disappoint others. But again, I want to remind you is that organizations, even if the organization is your own business, or even if it is your own church, they tend to be narcissistic. And it's not necessarily because the leaders at the top are narcissistic, but it's because organizations and businesses have to keep moving forward. And so if you don't set the boundary for yourself, what you're going to discover is no one else will. So you kind of get what you permit in this area of boundary setting. So here's my challenge for you as we wrap up this first segment of 4 about boundary setting. Is number 1 is that boundary setting is essential for you to be a healthy leader. It's essential for you to be a healthy leader. If you can't set boundaries as a leader, what you'll find is that you will lack sustainability because you will burn out eventually. Number 2 is that if you as a leader, or if you as a business owner or a person volunteering even in an organization, if you don't set boundaries, what you'll discover is that no one else will. Now, this can create some real bitterness and resentment because you can feel like, man, these people should want what's best for me. Look at me giving my very best to them. But most people in organizations aren't always thinking in that way for you. They're not thinking, how can I keep Aaron sustainable? They're generally thinking, what's best for the organization and how can Aaron contribute? Not what's best for the organization, how can I make sure that Aaron's resilient? So that little shift is not necessarily a personal thing, but it is an organizational reality. And we have to take ownership of that for ourselves, which means we have to set the boundary for ourselves because no one else will. Number 3, and this is my final point about boundary setting in this context, is that boundary setting is essential for thriving relationships. Whether those relationships are personal, whether they're at work, whether they're with family, it is essential for there to be a boundary to be able to be set in order for you really to thrive in those relationships, because those boundaries protect your energy and your power. Those boundaries, like in the story of the person that I shared who couldn't set a boundary, her energy is getting lower and lower and lower to the point where her achievement is actually going down. So if you want to achieve more, set a boundary on your time, set a boundary on how hard you work and how many hours you work, and give yourself time to refuel and recharge your batteries, because when you do that, it helps all of your relationships to thrive. Hey, if any part of today's message has inspired you or motivated you or given you a tool, do me a favor, subscribe to this page. Give me a like, leave a comment. My goal is to serve as many leaders just like you as I can, to give you inspiring and powerful information and tools so that you can overcome burnout.